If poverty is a disease that infects an entire community in the form of unemployment and violence, failing schools and broken homes, then we can't just treat those symptoms in isolation. We have to heal the entire community. And that's why, when I'm President of the United States of America, the first part of my plan to combat urban poverty will be to replicate the Harlem's Children's Zone in 20 cities across the country.
We were interested in doing some learning and exploring about what it meant to support children and families. At that same time, Jeffrey Canada and the Harlem Children's Zone was featured on 60 Minutes.
How will you know when the Children's Zone has worked?
When I see my kids by the thousands with degrees.
So we made this trip out to Harlem. We were just so inspired by his approach, came back energized, asked people to think about how might these organizations come together to think collectively about doing better for North Minneapolis.
And then the question got called, do you want to do this same kind of place-based wrap-around effort in North Minneapolis?
Sandra and an incredible group of volunteers came up with the idea of competing for the federal funds that would later be the underpinning of NAZ.
As the board chair, I was not optimistic that we were going to be a top 5 proposal out of 250 or more proposals.
But of course, with Sandra, amazing things can happen.
It was a historic event. Finally, the federal government of our country said that place right there that we call North Minneapolis is a twinkle in our eye. It's very important.
And I remember very distinctly, there was one thing that impressed me when I actually got to read the application, then I'm sure impressed the folks that actually were the reviewers. And what it said is,
and if it doesn't work, we'll keep trying until it does.
There are very few times in your life that you get to experience like pure joy. I remember the moment that I announced the award.
So on the behalf of the U.S. Department of Education, announced that the Northside Achievement Zone has secured a $28 million implementation.
I was shocked. I did a lot of crying that day.
I kept pinching myself because I couldn't really believe that this big dream that seemed so out of reach actually had come true.
So in the end, it really does come down to where you are and what the opportunities are in your community.
I saw really transformational work with the kids. What we've had for generations upon generations is a cultural assumption of failure. And what NAZ was about was assuming success.
We have rich data that's going to tell you that statistically significant gains have been made by our children and our families because of the wraparound support.
When NAZ began, we were working with just 217 families. Since that time, NAZ has scaled up to partner with 2,858 Northside households and 5,386 scholars. That's an average of 1,022 households per year. Since 2012, NAZ and our partners have supported nearly 700 families with housing needs and another 700 parents with career supports to stabilize their households and build income. 505 of our youngest scholars have received multiple scholarships, enabling them to attend high-quality early childhood centers led by our esteemed partners. In total, 973 scholars were enrolled in those same programs. NAZ has provided 8,287 academic enrichment programs for 3,047 school-age scholars. Since 2012, 961 NAZ parents have proudly walked across the stage as a Family Academy graduate.
There are a number of places that started Promised Neighborhoods with federal funding, and then when the funding left, they couldn't figure out a way to keep the efforts going. There was never a pause here in Minneapolis because of the work of the Northside Achievement Zone.
Federal grant helped to get the engine going, but it's been the local support that is keeping this train on the track.
When I moved to Minneapolis, NAZ was the first organization I personally got involved in. Just seeing the results And having the data in front of us to see the impact that NAZ was having on families is really inspiring for all of us, and a reason why we continue to lean in.
One of my very, very best memories was when we presented Sandra with a combined gift from General Mills and Target for, I believe, $6 million to a very stunned and moved Sandra Samuels.
And so the support of Target and General Mills was significant, saying we're gonna help NAZ sustain. And then, of course, Medtronic came with a $5 million gift so that we can continue working with children and families focused on health and well-being and academic success.
Boy, I'm excited to see what NAZ is able to do in the next decade, closing those educational opportunity gaps, their vision around cradle to career.
To have a wonderful life, to have good education, to have stability in their homes and in their communities, and to feel safe.
When students know they're of the community and they're being embraced by the community, when they graduate in the year that they had on the little onesie, they're gonna come back and remember that this community fed them, and I hope they come back here and serve our community, because we need great leaders.
Hope people here in Minneapolis understand they have one of the real national jewels of work in inner cities happening here at NAZ, and it should be really supported.
But you gotta make promises to our children to say, promise you that you're gonna be okay. We promise that you're gonna have a net, and we're not gonna let you fall.